Welcome to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast, where my guests share their stories of addiction, how they recovered, and the tools and practices they use to stay sober now. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Arlene. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I know you said that you're just getting over a cold and stuff, but I was thinking about you today, knowing that we were going to talk, and I was, doing my research and looking at your pictures and stuff, and you're like one of those people that just has like this inner glow. Like you just look peaceful. You just like your picture. It's like you're like radiating. And I was like, that's what yoga and meditation does for people. It's a good look.
Yeah, it works you from the inside out. Yoga turns your inner light on, and all of a sudden, the outer appearance changes. It's interesting. It's not that difficult either. Most people are like, yoga's so hard, or it's so hard to meditate. It's actually
Yeah.
not that challenging, and the results, like you said, are they're they're they exhibit themselves. They express themselves
Yeah.
outward. It's really nice.
Yeah. It's really cool. I've noticed that a lot. I interviewed Tommy Rosen a while ago, and I've interviewed a lot of people who are really into yoga and meditation and stuff. And there's just something about the lack of stress and the peace and serenity. It really shines through. So well done. And I want some. So we're going to talk about how to get that.
Sounds
I'm all
good.
about skincare, but I like the inner glow. The inner glow is good too.
It's much more affordable.
It's much more affordable. Yeah. Before we jump in, I like to play a little game called the lightning round, which is actually very slow, but it kind of just front loads the episode with some resources. So I know you wrote a book. We're going to be talking all about your book, but when you first got sober 15 years ago, was there a book or any books that really helped you on early in recovery?
Nothing. I didn't know anything about recovery, 12 steps, sobriety, spirituality. I was very lucky. I just went online. I looked up what to do if you're an alcoholic, and then I just started following links and reading some things online. And basically, they brought me to the meetings that saved my life, 12-step meetings.
So you weren't really into reading literature or anything like that early on?
No, no. If anything, I was reading things like Jack Kerouac, Allen
Oh, sure.
Ginsberg, Hunter S. Thompson, Beat Generation type stuff. So I was reading a lot of things about people who glorified the life of being alcoholic or a drug
Yeah.
addict, and so wasn't leading me in the right direction. There were no solutions in those books that I
Yeah,
saw.
Hunter S. Thompson, he's the Fear and no, uh Fear and
Yeah,
Loathing in Las Vegas or something like that.
correct.
Oh yeah, he's an interesting character. God, that's so funny. He just came up yesterday in conversation and yeah, the glorification of drugs and alcohol. So you started recognizing that there was a problem and just went straight to meetings. No literature early on.
No, no, and this is 2009. Actually, my first meeting was 2005, but there were no apps then. It wasn't
Right.
as widely accessible. The tools, the resources, and even there was the shame and the stigma that was associated, or at least the way I saw it back then. I wasn't about to tell the world I was an alcoholic and ask for help. So it was today. It's a much easier scene. I believe it seems to be.
Yeah.
It's more. We're normalizing it in a way where people who don't have a book, like we're talking about, who don't know where to go, can actually find something pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, as you look over the last 15 years, do you see any reoccurring themes of your sobriety? Do you have mantras that you use? Obviously, like mine's like one day at a time, right? These things that you learn that kind of carry you through. Do you have anything that you kind of live by, like motto or mantras?
Present moment, beautiful moment. I read that or heard that from Thich Nhat Hanh. He was
Mm,
a Zen Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He has a book that's called Present Moment, Wonderful Moment. But it was so simple. It was so easy to remember. Just I focused on my breath with the inhale, present moment, and with the exhale, wonderful moment. So I still use that today as a way to center myself, to ground myself, to really establish my awareness in the present moment. And then the reminder that this is a wonderful moment. It's not present moment, miserable moment. It's present moment, beautiful moment, wonderful moment, thankful moment. I've changed it over the years, but it usually comes back to that basic formula, which is present moment, beautiful moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea that, what you think about, you bring about, right? So whatever you focus on expands type of idea. That's really beautiful. As in terms of like self-care practices are really important for people to establish early on. And I know you probably do a lot of self-care, but do you have like a daily routine, a weekly routine? What does that look like for you?
I do each day. Every morning I wake up, I do prayer and meditation. The prayers that I used were prayers I learned and memorized in the 12-step meetings I went to, some 12-step literature. Over the years, I've added a few things here and there. So the prayers have pretty much stayed the same. I don't repeat them like a parrot, though, because, if you keep repeating like a
Yeah.
parrot, you might remain in the cage, right? You want to be set free. So I use the feeling or the emotion of where I am today and infuse those words, those same words over and over again with present moment emotion or feeling. So I use the same prayers and my meditation every morning is about 5 minutes or so. I've been reading Emmett Fox. Around the
Mm.
year with Emmett Fox. I've been reading that every morning, and I also read it in the evening for almost my entire sobriety. I just
Oh, wow.
like a daily reflection each day. I read whatever the next page is. So the morning is prayer, meditation, a little bit of reading. In the afternoon, I do some journaling. That's my way to sort of empty out my mind, my head, whatever's. Some days get long. There's a lot of work. There's many emails, text messages, phone calls. There's TV news. There's politics. If I don't stop at some point in the day, that stuff fills my head pretty quick, and it sort of filters my way of seeing the world. So every afternoon I journal a few pages. I actually picked that up from The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron.
Morning pages. Yeah.
Exactly. So I adapted them for me personally. I do them in the afternoon. So I call them my afternoon pages. And then I do a meditation in the afternoon, about 5 minutes. And in the evening, I do a gratitude list where in my mind I go through my entire day with gratitude. And I finish with uh, the same reading I used in the morning by Emmett Fox. I circle back to that reading again. And I've been doing that routine, if you will. I don't see it. It's funny because some people will hear something like that and think that's so disciplined. That's so tough. You have to do that 3 times a day. You do prayer and meditation. I would rather do that than be miserable or suicidal or depressed 3 times a day or 10 times a day or anxious and punching walls and kicking and screaming 5 or 10 times a day. So I think I got off easy, but that I actually enjoy it. So I look
Yeah.
forward to those moments because I'll just jump right to it. Those are my visits with God. Those are my
Mm.
spiritual moments where it's just me and my higher power, my creator, whatever you want to call that, whatever makes sense to anyone who's listening right now. Those are moments where I step into the portal of the divine. So the outside world is busy. It's busy. There's so many things. But when I sit for meditation or journaling or reading or prayer, it's just me and my higher power. And so that's a very special time. It's an appointment I don't want to miss.
Yeah, I love that. It's a way of nurturing the spiritual side. I tend to be like very sciencey, because there are days when I just don't have faith, and when I don't have faith, I have some science, right? Some empirical data. But I think a lot of people are really trying to improve their conscious contact with their spiritual side. So I love these ideas, and it doesn't sound like it takes very long either. Like five
No,
minutes, come on, who can't
yeah,
focus on your breath for 5 minutes?
exactly. I've done meditations and I've taken classes. I've even taught certain styles of meditation that are longer.
Mhm.
And when I started to meditate, I started with a 5 minute meditation. It worked. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I still just do a 5 minute meditation. I just do it many times throughout the day.
Okay. What are some of the misconceptions you've heard when you try to teach people about meditation?
Most people say they can't quiet their mind, that they are too fidgety, that they're too stressed. There's too many things they're thinking about. They can't do it. They tried it before. These are a lot of these. And it's like with yoga, people say, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible. I don't have balance. I don't know any Sanskrit. And a lot of us, we're pretty good at making up a lot. I don't know if they're excuses, but we have a lot of good reasons and ideas why we can't do something. And the reasons that we can do something, that list is actually more accessible. If you can breathe, you can meditate. If you have a human physical body, you can meditate. So if you're breathing and you're human, you're a viable candidate. You can meditate. And
Yeah.
it's really neat to throw out these old ideas like, well, I don't
Yeah.
know anything about meditation. I have ADHD or I'm hyperactive. And these things may be true,
Yeah.
but if you can breathe, which you're doing if you're human and alive, that's all I do when I meditate. I focus on my breath. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean you have to have a quiet mind. That's the
There it
misconception as well
is.
as, yeah, people
Yeah.
think meditation means you found some sort of spiritual, quiet, heavenly, divine place. You're lucky if you find that. What meditation
Yeah.
is just basically trying to stop, trying to find stillness. Trying is the operative word. It's like
Mhm.
trying to help another alcoholic. I don't know if I'm going to help him, but I'm going to try. So I'm going
Yeah.
to try to meditate. I'm going to try and quiet my mind. I've had a busy day. I'm going to try and relax my body. I'm stressed out. And
Yeah.
so that's the major misconception is people think they have to get it right and perfect and they're going to be levitating or they're going to, find nirvana in one session. Like I said, you're lucky if you do, but that's not the goal. The goal is just
Not the
to
goal.
yeah, stop,
The
just to
goal is to
pause.
not have a goal. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I hear that too. I recommend meditation and people are like, "Oh, I can't." And I'm like, "Well, maybe you just focus on 12 breaths or 10 or whatever. Focus on doing a few and maybe you're terrible at it at first, and that's fine. The point is it's a practice and you like yoga too, right? Like I did yoga pretty consistently for about a year and I just resigned. I was like, I'm just going to be terrible at it in the beginning. I'd come home and my husband would be like, "How was yoga?" And I was like, "Oh, I was terrible at it, but I felt so good after." But after a while, he's like, "When are you gonna stop saying you're terrible at it?" I was like, "I don't know," but that's not the point, right? The win was for me was just to show up.
Right?
Yeah, that's the win.
Yeah, there's
And
never a bad meditation or a bad yoga session. As long as you showed up to your mat or your cushion, that's a
yeah,
win. That's a
that's
victory.
that's the win. Yeah, that's the win to just show up and be present. Um, I always like to ask people like, "What's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?"
I'm glad I didn't know anything because if I would have known that it was going to change my life or turn me into a yoga teacher or send me on a spiritual path, I probably would have walked the opposite direction. So I'm glad I didn't know anything. I literally went to my first 12-step meeting having no idea what it was. I didn't know anyone who was sober. I had no conception of what the world looked like, the field. I didn't know what a rehab was versus a sober living house, none of these things that I now have some awareness of. So I'm actually glad I didn't know anything. And anything I would have known may have actually messed it up for me.
Yeah, I could really see that. Um, yeah, because maybe the idea of yoga teacher wasn't something that you aspired to be, or you had a misconception about that too. Let's talk about how we got here. Maybe you can share a little bit about what your family of origin was like, maybe like what your parents did for a living, that kind of thing.
Sure. And I appreciate these opportunities to share it. It's interesting. I've been sober. I know many people, after they're sober a while, the story doesn't change, but our perception does. My
Mm-hmm.
understanding of some of the
Yeah.
circumstances, especially family of origin issues. When I first got sober, I figured I had a pretty good childhood. I was a middle child. I grew up in Florida. My, mom did this, my dad did that. And then over the years, we start to peel back some of these layers and we realize maybe it wasn't. Maybe that was the story I was telling myself to protect myself, to shield myself from what was really happening. And so all that said, my understanding of where I'm at and what my story is, it's evolving. And so if we
Yeah.
have this talk again in another 15 years, it'll probably sound a little different. It's still my story though. So it's neat. It's just, it's not set in stone. But I did grow up a middle child. I grew up in Florida. Um, good kid. I had good grades. I was able to play sports and get some friendships and I think I started playing around with smoking cigarettes and I don't think I was drinking yet, but I'm around 11, 12 years old, started sort of messing around with, the kid down the street who had some cigarettes and his older brother got at them and then And then I had a drink, I think around 13 or 14. So it wasn't like it just took off right away and I was committing crimes or stealing cars. It was just sort of very slow, gradual process of realizing, oh, that's yeah, that's interesting. That the effect of taking a drink and but also how it made me feel. I kind of felt cool and older and like I
Yeah.
wasn't such a weird kid anymore. And that's what was starting to come up again in those teenage years. For many of us, we realized, it feels weird going through puberty and getting hormones and we start getting very self-conscious about how we look
Yeah.
and who we are and what zip code we live in, what kind of clothes we wear. And so all that was going on at the same time. But I'm still able to function. I'm going to school and I have friends and then I get a car and I got my license and but now I'm drinking more. And now I start to realize I'm the one out of my peer group, my friends, that's usually going a little too far with drinking too much and then starting to do some really boisterous, really over the top things while I'm drinking. I'm starting to be a show off. Like I'll take a few drinks and say, "Watch this, guys," and then I'll go jump off a wall to see if I can land 10 feet down. And it was just I started getting to these places where the alcohol took me where I felt larger than life and that I could do anything. And I also wanted people to see that. So it gave me this sort of, courage, like we talk about liquid courage. And then that was what led me to go talk to the women so I can get dates and girlfriends. I somehow finished high school and then even made it into college. And this is where the drinking really starts to take off. And I don't think about stopping at any point. I don't go out I'm talking about when I was around this age. I wasn't thinking who's going to be the designated driver, where should I sleep tonight, what time should I go home? None of these are thoughts. My process at that time was we're going to go out and get drunk. We're going to go out and get hammered. And that was it. So I had no off switch once I started. And I started to look forward to these outings, these endeavors. And so if I had friends, I usually had one or two that were going to drink as much as I drank. And we would just go out, drink, go to the bars, and try to hang out with some women, and then do whatever else comes up after that. And that was it. So around this time also, the emotion or feeling side, um, there's a lot of loneliness going on inside of me and some depression,
Mm.
but I don't have the words for it at the time. I don't know how to articulate that, so I just keep drinking. That seems to take care of it. There's anxiety. There's the not fitting in stuff. There's my friends are starting to go off to cool, nice, awesome colleges, and I don't really fit into that category. So there's a feeling of being left behind. There's a feeling of sort of poverty or lack because I noticed that they can go to those colleges because they have some money. Their parents are
Yeah.
able to afford that. Where I came from or the way I grew up, that wasn't part of the plan for me, and so I feel a little less than, a little bit inferior. And so I start developing that complex. But the alcohol takes care of all this because you get to feel cool and strong. And like I said, you get to jump off of walls and speed your car down anyway. So I moved to New York City when I was 24 because I wanted to pursue some creative things, acting and painting and writing and photography. I thought I'd be a modern day Renaissance man. But the problem is I took my drinking habits with me, and New York is a city that doesn't sleep. So now I could just drink whenever, anytime, any day, and I'm no longer home near my family. So now I don't have anything or anyone to be accountable to. So I start doing some of the things I wanted to do in New York, and but the drinking really takes precedence. I work the bare minimum just to make enough to pay rent and but then I'm really looking forward to just drinking every single day now. And the drinking got kind of bad, meaning my inner world got bad. It got really dark. I start feeling things like, what's the point in living? Suicidal type
Oh,
thoughts
dark.
and thinking about jumping off the top of my building where I lived in New York City. And these things would just come out of nowhere. And it was really kind of weird. And I figured, you know what? Maybe I got to move. Maybe it's just New York that's killing me. It's too much energy here. So I decided I was going to go to Los Angeles. But the problem was I took myself with me. So the same mind that wasn't able to calm itself, that didn't have any tools to soothe itself, came with me. So in Los Angeles, I landed there and just picked up where I left off, started drinking, and so I ping pong back and forth between LA and New York, drinking, just living this life, picking up a job or two in the entertainment industry here or there, but mostly I was the stereotypical struggling actor waiting tables at restaurants and collecting unemployment. And I just felt like I was circling the drain, just sort of wasn't doing anything with my life, purposeless, rudderless. I didn't really feel like I had any direction. What woke me up to life was my dad called me one night and he said, "Your mother's in the hospital." I said, "What's going on? Is she okay?" He said, "No." And it turned out she had fallen down at work and he had just caught me. I was sitting in Los Angeles. I had my drink and I had my pack of cigarettes and I was already seated and I was going to start my drinking session. Most of us, when we have our routine, it's funny, we talked about a spiritual routine earlier. I had a drinking routine every day at the same exact time, the same glass, the same bottle, the same number of ice cubes, the cigarettes, the lighter, the ashtray was all set up the same way. Not as healthy as a spiritual routine, but I had a routine. I'm just about to start drinking. My dad calls. He caught me. And he said my mother had fallen down and she was in the hospital. And I'm sitting there with this first drink because once the first one goes in, I can't stop. I'm not going to stop. But he happened to catch me just before the first one went in. So I was able to put it down, which was really rare and weird because I didn't have a program. But somehow just the thought of my poor mother was lying in a hospital. I got on a plane that night and I went and I saw her. And it turned out she had a brain tumor and it didn't look good. So uh, she got a diagnosis. She had brain cancer and she had about, if she was lucky, 50-50 chance of living the next 2 years. And so this really woke me up to just, it didn't mean I stopped drinking right away, but the seed was planted that, wow, life is really fragile. It's really, you don't know what's going to come. You don't know how long you're going to live. So for the next year and a half or so, I would go between LA and Florida to visit and help take care of my mom. And then she eventually passed away. I was there near the end. I was able to help take care of her. After she passed, it was about 8 months later when I got sober. And what I had realized was she wanted to live and she couldn't. I had the miracle of life and I was wasting it.
Yeah.
And that didn't sit right with me anymore. I couldn't reconcile that there are many people in the world who want to live. They would do anything to have one more breath, one more day, one more chance to make their dreams come true. And I was sitting here with the miracle of life, relatively healthy, even though I'd been drinking for so many years, and I wasn't doing anything with it. And I couldn't look myself in the mirror anymore. So it was time to do something. And I think I said a prayer. I don't know what a prayer was at the time. I didn't know what I was saying, but I remember looking in the mirror one night around this time, and I think I said something like, help, basically. I don't know
Yeah.
who I was saying it to. I was looking in the mirror, didn't recognize myself. I'm pretty sure I passed out on the bathroom floor that night because I had been drinking that night. And within a few days, I somehow made that internet search. What do you do when you're alcoholic? And the rest is history. I found my way uh, to uh, to a room where other people knew what I was talking about, and they were saying a lot of things that made sense to me. And I was glad I didn't know, like we talked about, anything about it. If you would have told me, well, there's this place where you can go where people are really nice, they'll give you coffee, you sit, you listen, you read, you pray, I would have said, nah, that sounds boring. I don't want to do that. What kind of people are they? What, yeah,
Weirdos.
yeah, I don't, I can, you know, and so I'm glad I didn't know anything. And so that was 15 years ago, and so much has happened since then. And I'm glad I was willing to do what it takes. It doesn't take much, like we talked about with meditation. Like if you can breathe and you can sit, if you have a human body, you don't even have to sit. If you want, you can lie down. You
Yeah.
can walk slowly. That's still meditation. It's the same thing with how I feel about sobriety. It's not hard. It's not. difficult. It's just different. We're not used to doing it. That's why it's so challenging.
Yeah.
It's not challenging to take care of yourself every day, to not poison yourself every day. It's not a challenge. It's just different because we're so used to poisoning ourselves every day. We're so used to feeling self-defeating behaviors and thoughts, and we're so used to feeling, so it's different to feel self-love. It's not challenging. It's just different. Um, so I'm glad I was pretty much stripped bare at that point, by the grief, the loss, of my
Yeah.
mother, the sadness, and just years of just, I was ready to just stop fighting and
Yeah.
open to a different path, whatever it might be. I was willing to go, you know what? It's got to be better than what I've been doing, so I'll take it.
Yeah. It sounds like that there was like a short space between, the incident with your mom and making the inquiry about what to do and you going to a meeting and then I mean it's a lot of times I hear people I knew it was a problem, I struggled for a long time, tried to moderate, blah blah blah. There's a whole process, but am I reading that wrong? Like, am I hearing it wrong? Like, where you just were like it was like a shocking moment and you just looked it up and then like went to a meeting right away?
There was about 8 months there
Oh,
where,
8 months. Oh, between when she got sick
right
and
after my
and
mother,
that's I
yeah,
see.
after she had passed, I stayed in Florida with my dad for a couple weeks. And then he said, "Go back home. Just go back and start living your life again." And so I went back to LA, and that's when I had about it took about 8 months for me to figure out what to do and how to do it. In that 8 months, that was a living hell. It was
Yeah.
so now if I ever needed a reason to drink, this was a good one. So now I actually drank more than ever, and I cared less about my health than I had ever done. And so I almost, this is when things got really dark. And
Okay.
that's what led to the realization that I bet if I don't do something in my life soon, it's a complete waste and
Got
I'm
it.
not going to make it. And I think I ended up at the ER a couple times. I took myself actually because I was starting to have some health issues. My body was starting to fall apart from the
Wow.
years of just poisoning myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a little period there between
Okay.
the actual the moment of loss when my mother passed, and then actually, my rebirth. It's interesting when I look at it that way. So her death led to my rebirth. Her passing,
Yeah.
was the catalyst for my chance to, have a new life, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to pull something so good out of something so hard. That sounds very difficult. And 8 months of moderation, wanting to quit, and yeah, that's really painful. I'm so curious about your process through the 12 steps. I'm obviously a 12-step advocate, and I'm not like a this way is the only way kind of girl, but I just loved the process of it. I was desperate for a community and friends and, things like that. So I found all of that immediately when I started going to meetings. How long did it take you to kind of suss out a sponsor and start working steps?
Oh, these are great questions. I wish there was a podcast like this when I was getting sober,
I
if
know.
because it would have been so great to hear like somebody talk about this because I had no idea. Nobody was being
Can I
open.
just tell you, sorry to interrupt you, but can I just tell you that is so wild that like you didn't have any sort of impressions about 12 step or eight because it's in the media, it's in movies and I mean even 15 years ago, I think there was did you once you got sober, did you start looking for like recovery memoirs and quit lit as they call it, the cool kids call it now?
Not really. I
You
think
didn't see too much.
I wasn't reading anything. I
Yeah.
guess some of the books were out, but I had no idea.
Not even after you got sober.
After I got sober, I started to see there there was I was looking more in the yoga world, but I did see that
Okay.
there were some books out. There were some bestsellers around the time, and
Yeah.
um, I think it was James Fry. He wrote the Million Little
Oh yeah.
Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember hearing about that and read that and
Yeah.
things like that. I was starting to see like, oh wow, yeah, there's some people who, and I
Yeah.
was starting to I would compare as, but so it wasn't that
Right.
helpful. I would think my story's not that bad. So I didn't think I related to what he was talking about. And but
Suicidal, unhealthy, but not that bad.
right. Yeah. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's the same story. It's just the
Yeah.
details are different.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think we get so accustomed to our pain, it feels normalized that we don't realize that, yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did you get a sponsor and start working steps and do the whole thing?
By default, it wasn't my choice. I was going to meetings. Somehow I just made the commitment. I wasn't working and I had nothing else to do. So I didn't have any excuses why I couldn't get to a meeting every day. And I lived in West Hollywood, so there's 2,000 meetings
Oh,
a
nice.
week in Los Angeles. There's
Good meetings too.
such, yeah, there's so many great meetings.
Yeah.
They're very accessible. You can walk to a lot of them. You can park down the street. You can catch a ride. You can take a bus. Today there's no good excuse not to get to a meeting.
Right.
And so I just went to a meeting every day at a place that's called the Log Cabin. It was it's still there actually. And there was a guy who came up to me within my first week or so because I was just sitting by myself in the back. And he started asking me what you just asked. He goes, "Hey, you got a sponsor?" I said, I don't know what that is." And he said, "Oh, it's just someone that takes you through the steps." He goes, "If you need a sponsor, I can. Have you been through the steps?" And I said, "I don't." I said, "Listen, I just got here. I don't really. I'm not
You're
even
all, I know
sure
nothing.
what you're talking about. If you just give me a minute, give me a few days, you know." He goes, "You want my number?" I said, "Sure." You know, so that same guy. His name was Joe. His name still is Joe. I saw him at the next few meetings I went to, and then within a week or so, he asked me two or three more times, and I finally just said, Sure, yeah, I'll go through the steps." So accidentally, I found myself finding a sponsor, and he took me through the steps, and he saved my life. I asked him a couple of years ago. I said, "Why were you
Oh,
so persistent?" And he said, "Because I recognize myself in you. I saw you sitting there in the back of the room. You looked so sad and broken and
oh my
I
God.
it didn't look like that you were going to get up and stick your hand out and talk to anybody, so I came to you." And I said, "Man, you
Why are you
saved."
making me cry on my own podcast? I
I
need some
said
tissue. That is so sweet.
I said, "Thank you.
He
Thank
saw
you."
himself in you.
Yeah, he's because he only had about a year sober. So to think,
Oh,
he's not a guy with 20 years sober. He with just a year sober, he went and, how we say, go and just put your hand out and try and
put your hand
so.
out.
And then I asked him another time something similar, and he said, "That's the promise I made my sponsor. When we finished step 12, my sponsor said, 'Now go take another man through the steps.'" And so that was another reason why he came to get me, from the back of the room where I was literally holding up the wall. I wanted to
Yeah.
sit next to the door just in case I wanted to escape or leave or just
Yeah.
bolt out of there. So that's how I started the steps. Somebody came and recruited me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I think, when you first get sober, it's hard to reach out your hand. I remember going to these big meetings. I'm from San Jose. So I'd go to these big meetings and I remember this gal, like I would hear her speak and she was such a eloquent speaker. And I just like was in awe of her. And before a meeting one day, I was just sitting there by myself, really just kind of envious of all these people like hugging and saying hi. And like they clearly were, everyone was friends and like I didn't know anybody. And she came up to me as she stuck her hand out. She's like, "Hi, my name's Cece. I don't think I've met you yet." And I just was like, I was, it meant so much to me
Yeah,
that she did that, that has then been my thing is when I go to a meeting, I stick my hand out and my line is, I don't think I've met you yet. So,
yeah. And I did something similar since Joe came and got me. I was about 6 months sober and I had finished the steps, and I made the same promise to Joe that he made to his sponsor that I would take another man through the steps. So I was at a meeting one night, and there was a newcomer who raised his hand at the end when they asked if anyone had a burning desire, a
yeah.
burning desire to share. And this young man shared, and I saw myself in him. So I found him after the meeting. He was outside. He was unlocking his bicycle. He had chained his bicycle to the
Mhm.
street pole. And I think
Mm,
I said something like similar to what you said. I said, I don't think we've met. I'm Bryan. He told me his name and we started talking. And I asked him if he wanted to work the steps. So I actually ended up taking him. He was the first guy I ever took through all 12 steps. And as far as I know, he's still sober today.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Can I just say that to go through all the steps in 6 months is that's amazing. Like that seems pretty quick to me. It took me a while. I
I,
I think it took me at least a year.
yeah, I probably could have and might have should have done it quicker. I wasn't doing anything else. I
Oh.
was actually being a little lazy. I would just really take
Oh.
my time. I wasn't
You like
working.
literally had nothing else to
I
do.
had nothing else to do, so I would just do it a little bit here and there, but I actually probably could have finished a little quicker.
Wow.
I've gone through the steps a few times since then, and it's the last time I did it, it took about a year.
Okay.
Now I have more responsibility in the world. I have a job, I have a daughter, so I don't have
Oh,
so it's neat now. But early on, yeah, it was a few months or so. It was within that 5 month range that I finished.
yeah.
It's neat because how much do we really know about ourselves in that early sobriety period? So we're
Yeah.
answering questions and we're going through the work and we're doing it as best as we can. And it's neat to
Mm,
revisit those same questions, the same work, or even in a different format years later and realize, like I talked about earlier with my story,
yeah.
yeah, step one means a whole lot more to me now than it did. Wow, I didn't really get step eight before, and now I really see the purpose of it. So it's neat.
Yeah.
There's definitely there's a timeless quality to that format, the 12 steps.
Yeah, I had a sponsor sort of point out that, and I've done them many, many times over the period of time that I've been sober. And she kind of pointed out, every time you go through the steps, you change. Like you're literally like a different person. So the next time you step up to address the steps again, you get something different out of it because you are different. Right. And that really kind of hit home to me. And it's just been a practice really of just sort of going deeper and deeper and unraveling some like limiting beliefs or my denial. I have blind spots and just really applying these principles in a different way. What was your experience of, coming to understanding what a higher power is? It doesn't sound like you grew up with religion. Is that a fair statement?
We, I grew up Jewish and I did have a bar mitzvah, but it wasn't really a central point of it wasn't a focal point in my childhood. We weren't very
Hmm.
religious. I didn't care too much personally about it. And I knew as soon as I finished the Hebrew school and the bar mitzvah, I didn't want anything to do with Judaism or Hebrew school. I was done with it. So yeah, at 13, I was pretty much finished. I didn't like the teachings, the teachers at the Hebrew school. I wasn't fond of the stories or the way they were presented. Now I love the Bible. I love the Torah. I love so many religious stories and traditions, the mythology, um, but back then I just wanted nothing to do with it. It was, uh, so no, I wasn't really, there was no
Yeah.
higher power for me or God back then. It was just something I was supposed to learn and memorize so I can go do that thing and stand on the stage and do that bar mitzvah thing and just to make my parents happy and just be done with it.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. When you were talking about not knowing how to pray, I just kind of assumed that, you didn't grow up with anything. So it's interesting to hear that you actually, did the whole bar mitzvah thing, but not understand like what it feels like to pray.
Yeah, I think it wasn't my choice and it was something my parents I think were doing to try to fit in with the other Jewish families in the area and
Hmm.
it felt phony. It didn't feel authentic to
Oh,
how we
yeah.
lived and how the way we acted or spoke in the house. It was just really it was such a difference between what was being talked about at Hebrew school and then what I was actually seeing and feeling and experiencing in my home. I'm like,
Wow.
I don't get this. I don't it
Didn't
was
make
too
any sense.
confusing. So
Yeah.
it yeah.
So how did you come to an understanding of a higher power? It typically is like an evolution, right? What was that like for you?
That was interesting. That almost had me turn tail, as the saying goes. Because once I got into the 12-step rooms, I saw the steps on the wall and I saw God, Him, power. Uh, so I thought, oh, wait a minute. So this, and I started having flashbacks, like, so this is like a Hebrew school kind of thing. Like this was, but then luckily I started to hear people talk about find your own conception. It's even in the, the
Hmm.
literature, just find your own conception. So I looked up. So I think one of the early versions of my higher power was the meeting I went to every morning, Monday through Friday at the log cabin was 7:30, if I'm not mistaken. It was 7 or 7:30. I think it was 7:30 in the morning. And that was a packed meeting. There was 50 to 75 people in Hollywood. So these are Hollywood types
In
that are
Hollywood.
up in the morning at
Yeah.
7:30, but they're getting up earlier, right, to get ready and shower and get in the car. So I looked up one morning and there was an air conditioner hanging from the ceiling. And I thought, whatever higher power got all of these people in Hollywood who normally wouldn't be here at 7 a.m. to come to a meeting, to be here, to actually show up present, sober, that's a power that's greater than me. So I'm just gonna think of, so I actually looked up and I saw the air conditioner. I said that, well, that air conditioner is my higher power then. Just I had to just put something physical to the idea, like
Literally higher.
whatever's hanging above us, higher than us, that's keeping us all together and sober today. And so I have to admit my first higher power was an air conditioner. And then eventually it evolved. I started to think
Yeah.
about my mother, her spirit, since she was no
Mm,
longer with us. So her understanding, her perception, her love would be higher, would be
mm,
infinitely greater than anything I can fathom for myself or foresee for myself. So I started
yeah.
to look higher than the air conditioner. I looked toward
Yeah.
my mother. I looked toward the heavens. I looked toward a heavenly father, toward that type of idea. And so over the years, my higher power has just become this guiding force. And I don't have many words for it except it's more of an experiential thing.
Mhm.
It's with me with whether I'm walking, whether I'm talking, whether I'm teaching, whether I'm unemployed, whether I'm parenting. It's if I'm in the country or if I'm traveling somewhere. It's just this. I'm never alone. So a lot of
Mm,
the things we'll hear from people who are trying to get sober is they feel lonely, they feel desperate, they feel
yeah.
desolate, they feel isolated. Nobody understands them. And what a beautiful thing in recovery that when your higher power is with you, you're never alone. Ever again will you ever be abandoned or forgotten or forsaken. And so that's one of the aspects of my higher power is something that is eternally uh, by my
Isn't it?
side,
Yeah.
guiding me, leading me, not toward temptation or not toward darkness or negativity, but always in the right direction, always toward goodness and wholeness and beneficial, positive things. So it's like I've got an Uber driver, if you will, that always knows where I'm supposed to go, even before I do, and gets me there on time.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that is a very common experience. People get sober. It's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. We feel so isolated in our misery and sadness that we don't realize that there's legions of people who actually feel exactly like that. Yeah, it's so validating to then go to these meetings and meet these people who are like, yeah, I could see how you'd feel that way. It just feels so validating. I want to transition a little bit to your book. You have a book called Recovery with Yoga, Supportive Practices for Transcending Addiction. And I love how you're really addressing a lot of the underpinnings of addiction. You know, you mentioned obsession, anxiety, and depression. Um, and I kind of keyed into some of what I was reading about the inquiry questions. I feel like a lot, the quality of our life sort of depends on the depth of our questions, the questions that we ask ourselves. What are some of the questions, the inquiry questions that you've included in your book?
The practice itself comes from yoga. You'll find it anywhere, but that's where well, first we talked about the 12 steps. That's a process
Mhm.
of it's self-examination.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna you're
very
gonna ask
practical.
yourself, a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and you're the only one that has the answers to those questions. So get busy trying to figure out who you are and answer the questions. And then in yoga, it's called Atma Vichara. It's self-inquiry. It's the same idea as you just keep taking this inner journey and you keep peeling back the layers. So when it came time to put the book together, it just made sense and felt right that at the end of every chapter is based on a quality, a timeless universal quality like honesty, courage, integrity, perseverance. There's questions usually at the end of each chapter that help readers actually figure out what these principles mean for them. So I'll take a quick look and see. Uh, in the There's a chapter. The title is Transparency, and then there's different sections. There's a section for mind, body, and spirit. But I'm just looking right now. I flipped open to the body section. So some of the questions to do some self-inquiry in regard to transparency is how do you honor your body?
Mm.
Do you eat nutritious foods in appropriate amounts? Do you know where your food comes from? Do you bathe and shower regularly? Do you care for your skin? Do you wash your clothes often? So the line of questioning in this case is is really literal. How do you take care of your body? And be transparent. You know, a lot of us, oh, I shower every day. Do you really? Well, no, like every other day. Like, oh, I eat organic foods. I eat healthy. Do you really? Well, if I, usually just eat fast
Mostly.
food. Yeah, so be transparent, like be really
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
In the mind section, I'll read a couple of those questions that are on the next page. What holds space within your thought forms? What do you think about most often? Where do your thoughts travel throughout the day? What do you dream about? What are your goals? So the idea of taking the questioning is someone can sit with a journal, they can sit with their sponsor or someone they trust and actually talk about it and see what comes up. I've known in my own practices that if I'm not questioning, if I'm not seeking, uh, I I just know there's no end to the journey. And unless I'm
Yeah.
asking, I'm not going to find. And, seek and ye shall find. So the idea is ask yourself a question and then sit with it, meditate on it, write about it, talk to somebody about it. Like one of the last questions, what are your goals? Most of us, we set goals. Let's say we're 20 years old. We want to finish college, get a job, do this, do that. And we don't revisit that goal if ever, or maybe it's 5 or 10 years later. Most likely, a lot of things have changed in your life. It may be time to revisit the goals you set for the 20-year-old version of yourself because now you're 30 or 40 or 50. You may want to update those goals. And that's what I started to find in my recovery was, like I said, I was reading books by alcoholics and addicts, like I mentioned, Jack Kerouac and Hunter S. Thompson, even Ernest Hemingway. These guys did not
Yeah.
live long lives. Most of them died
Mhm.
an alcoholic or drug addicted death. It wasn't
Yeah.
pretty. And
Right.
so I had to go back. Who inspires you? Those guys
Mm.
don't inspire me anymore. So now it's Mother
Yeah.
Teresa, it's Dalai Lama, it's Gandhi, it's Martin Luther King Jr., it's Thich Nhat Hanh. And I'll revisit that list in another 5 or 10 years and probably add some new people. And so it's neat to continue to self-examine, to continue to inquire because we're not the same people we were 5, 10, 20 years ago. So I think the self-inquiry process is really important as a gauge to it's like taking your temperature. Where are you today?
Yeah.
How do you feel? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? If we don't ask, we're not going to know. And one of the worst things for a lot of us in recovery is just to kind of coast. We don't rest on our laurels, right? That's
Yeah.
if you're not asking, if you're not inquiring, if you're just using yesterday's sandwich to feed you today, you're going to starve. It's not a good recipe. It's not a good formula.
Yeah. No, you're right. Listen, we shouldn't be the same, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even a year ago. I think when you're on this sort of self-improvement journey, it's really, I don't know if self-improvement really is the right word anymore. It feels like, we're growing and evolving. And as we do that, it's like our true self emerges, right? It's more of a shedding of things that no longer service us. And then it allows like our true authentic self to kind of emerge, right? But as we continue emerging, it's like we just keep evolving and evolving, and that's we're growing all the time. And so, yeah, it's important to do all that stuff. I was really also curious about there's this 30 yoga and mindfulness tools, and I'm sort of a tools junkie. Like there are so many tools. A friend of mine were laughing at recently where it's like, oh my gosh, like you could spend all morning, with all your tools. So I was like, okay, three tools a half an hour. I just kind of rotate out my tools so it doesn't become rote. But what kinds of tools did you include in the book?
The tools would be things like we talked about, self-inquiry questions,
Prayer,
meditations,
meditation, yeah.
mantras, mudras. That's when we bring our fingers together in certain positions,
Ah.
certain yoga poses, and affirmations, guided meditations. So it's stuff that's things that are very accessible, no matter what you might believe in. So, for example, I just flipped open the book in the chapter about acceptance near the end. So a lot of these chapters are broken down into practices as well. So near
Hmm.
the end, it says the subtitle is Practicing Acceptance. And it says the following affirmations assist with the process of acceptance. These sentences can be read each morning or evening to boost morale and encourage perception of things as they are. These words honor the human journey from addiction to recovery. Find your own pace and style of reading these lines and feel free to adapt this exercise in any way that works best for you. And the lines I offered as a suggested as a tool is I am a human being. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I do my best. I am worthy of love. I am on a path to wellness. I imagine myself healthy and whole. I send thoughts of healing to myself and to anyone who suffers. My inner nature is calm, balance, and peace. A wellspring of wisdom resides within me. Recovery is possible for me today through the power of acceptance. So that's a tool, if you will, for how to use positive affirmation
Hmm.
to find acceptance. So at the beginning we talk about, or at least I mention, I'm human, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, I do my best. So there's an acknowledgement of our faults, our shortcomings, but it's okay. There's no
Yeah.
blame or judgment here.
Hmm.
And so a lot of the tools, if not all the tools, are to, like you talked about, let go of limiting beliefs, conditioned behaviors, these habit
Yeah.
energies, these wrong perceptions that somehow we're broken or we're flawed or we're sinners and we'll never get better. And I hear a lot of that sometimes in recovery, and it's I don't find that's true for in my story, and I know many others in recovery. You can transcend. I love that's the reason we chose that title, Transcending Addiction. Let's
Yeah.
not spend the next, few decades miserable. Let's find
I
the
know.
joy. Let's find the happiness. What's the point in getting sober and doing all this work? Because it is work.
It
But
is.
get the results. You've come this far. So
Yeah.
self-love is at the end of that. Love yourself and find the wisdom within. That's also mentioned there. So
Yeah.
the tools are meant to be malleable, meaning use the hammer, use the screwdriver, whatever works for you. Use the meditation, use the prayer, use the mantra. And it's neat because I am getting feedback now. The book's been out about a year, so it's neat to hear from people who said, I
Yeah.
love that mantra on page such and such, or I use that pose, or something we did in my yoga class at my local studio is what you talked about in your book. It was so awesome. And
Yay.
so it's neat. So people are relating, which I hope they would, because
Yeah.
it's definitely universal. You don't have to be an advanced yogi to be able to use any of the yogic tools.
Yeah. I love that you can just kind of start where you're at. That's all. No judgment. Yeah, just start where you're at. Listen, that was really beautiful. I feel like that's the perfect place to sort of bring this to a close. Where do people find your book?
Anywhere books are sold online, Amazon. The book is out with Shambhala Publications. Penguin
Nice.
Random House is distributing, so you could just type it in anywhere, Recovery with Yoga, or use my name. Go to my website.
Okay, perfect. I will leave links to everything in the show notes. And if people want to reach out to you, social media, Is that
Sure.
good? Okay, I'll leave links to all that too. Brian, it was such a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you today, and I feel just a little more centered and a little more encouraged to continue my practice. So thank you so much for that inspiration.
Oh, thank you for having me. And then again, thank you for having this podcast, for making it available to, you know, I don't, I've done a lot of these interviews and I have the book out in the world, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to meet everybody that either reads the book or listens to an interview I did, but I like to believe that it will help them in some way. So, uh, I,
Undoubtedly.
yeah, I hope you know that your podcast, there's countless people out there that are looking for help, and so just that you have this out there in the world, it's a blessing. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. It is my honor, and it's such a fun way to get to meet really cool people with the shiny glow that you have. So good to be with you today. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.